This is a little monster video. This is about evil little kids. I'm going to be talking about a lot of things. I'm going to really be focusing on satyrs a lot. I'm definitely going to be talking about Peter Pan a lot. Okay, because I'm trying to do all the Greek monsters. I did Medusa. I'm going to try to do satyrs now. But I'm going to mix it in with the child stuff. Okay, and I'm going to be talking a lot about some Greek culture, and I'm going to be talking about some Irish Scotland culture and where all that stuff comes from, and also something very important. I'm going to be talking about where I believe this version of a cherub comes from. This chubby child with wings. I'm going to tell you what I think it comes from anyway. And yeah, I'm going to start off with this false cherub right here. Obviously in the Bible there's nowhere that says cherubs are chubby little children, so I've tried to figure out where it comes from. I think it comes from a multitude of things. First of all, it probably comes from Tammuz. Most people know that. Okay, Tammuz was a little kid. He was a young king, or a young god that couldn't age or doesn't get older. Okay. And even in this Tammuz, sometimes he has wings, okay? He has broken wings in the ancient Near East. That's from how the story goes. But I really want to talk about the Persian. In the Persian culture, I've talked about the Persian Satan, Ahura Mazda. Ahura Mazda usually looks like a lion or something, a goat lion. He's part goat and part lion. But something that's very interesting about Ahura Mazda, the Persian Satan, is that he can transform himself into a little kid. He can rise up from the underworld and disguise himself as a very young child. And then by the time the Romans came and the Catholic Church just adapted all this stuff, they took all the stuff, and this child, chubby cherub Satan thing became known as cherubs, even though they're not in the Bible. So that's probably where they come from, I imagine. Okay, now I'm going to jump to the Irish and Scottish Ireland culture. Okay, so I'm going to talk about changelings now. Changelings are children who are swapped out by demon children, basically. That it's not really your kid anymore. It's a little demon. It's a little troll or a goblin. And it looks just like it looks almost just like your regular kid, but there's usually something wrong with it. It usually is swapped in with a wooden version, which is where Pinnochio comes from, by the way. Okay, this is totally where Pinnochio comes from. It's either swapped out with a wooden boy, okay, but there's usually something wrong with it. Like it has a big nose, or it looks older, or it talks like it's older than it usually is, or it has teeth already, or its eyes are all black. Or there's something, you can usually tell there's something wrong with it, okay? So a troll or demon is swapped out with a regular kid in replacement of a wooden child or a actual troll baby or something. You know, there's something wrong with it. You can detect something wrong with this child. And also I wanted to bring this up. If your child in the Scottish Irish culture, okay, if your child is born with a caul. A caul, again, it's when the embryonic sac membrane, it covers a baby's face as like a veil, and there's all kinds of superstition with that. It means a lot of things. It either means your child is going to be cursed, or it's going to die, or things are going to be after it. It means it's going to be cursed, or it's going to die, or it's going to be swapped out with a demon baby or something, okay? It's a curse, which is partially this caul over your face, this murky thing, is partially where ghost imagery comes from, okay? Because in multiple cultures, ghosts are not good, okay? They're usually demonic, and this murky, milky covering over a human body is partially where ghost imagery comes from, which is really important. I'm going to bring that up in a minute. And not to mention, it's partially where this tilted hat covering your face comes from. And I have no idea why it turned into a good thing, because originally it was supposed to be a bad thing. But that's what happens in these ancient cultures. One generation will say it's bad, and the next generation will say it's good. And that's just what happens all the way across the world. And again, you can see some of this in movies. Like, I can only use old movie references because I don't really watch movies anymore too much. Like, have you ever seen The Orphan? she's a little girl, but you find out she's actually an old lady. Have you ever seen that movie? That would be a changeling. That would be a changeling themed movie. Okay, or if you've ever seen Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary, if you've never seen Pet Sematary, it's where, you know, his son dies and he buries him in an ancient burial ground. Okay, and his son comes back, but he's evil. It's not really him. Okay, that would be like a more of a Persian version of what's going on. Okay, because the devil likes to disguise himself as a little kid to mess with you, especially little kids that you know or knew or who have passed on. All right, and even skinwalkers and shapeshifters do that. They act like little kids calling out in the wilderness, right, in the forest, to try to lure you into the forest, and they're gonna mess with you, right? Okay, so if you're seeing a ghost child, God will use this culture stuff, even though it's kind of messed up. He will use some of it to expose the devil. He will use other people's cultures to try and warn you about stuff. Okay, so if you're seeing a little ghost child, it is not the actual little person of the soul of that little kid. Okay, it's a trick. Okay, you can see that there's something wrong with this ghost picture of this ghost. He looks weird, right? His eyes look weird, and he looks very dark and weird. That is a demon. Okay, it's a demon. Okay, ghost children are demons. They're the Persian Satan. They're changelings. They are actually evil. They are not the ghosts of your little kid. And I'm not saying that to upset anyone. I'm saying that because I don't want the devil to mess with you. All right, he's messing with you. He's feeding off of your agony and your hurt because you lost your child, and he's using it to mess with you. And I'm actually going to bring that up right now. I'm going to talk about why in the Bible it talks about women weeping over Tammuz, okay? I'm going to get into it a little bit. So I guess I'm going to go back to the Pet Sematary thing, and I'm going to go back to the changeling thing. Okay, so yes, demons are real. Ghost children are probably demonic, okay? But just because your child is born with a birthmark or a deformity or disability doesn't mean it's a demon. Okay, this is what happens when you don't have the Holy Spirit to balance this stuff out. You literally thinking your actual baby is a demon and then hurting it somehow, because that's according to that how to get rid of it. You have to torture the baby to get rid of the demon, and which is ridiculous. And I'm really gonna have to bring this up because the Catholic Church promoted this for a very long time. They were like, yes, the reason why you have a demon baby, the reason why your baby is born with a weird birthmark is because it wasn't baptized, and it's a changeling. It's a demon baby, and that is unbalanced craziness. Okay, the Catholic Church actually promoted this troll business if your baby was born with a deformity, okay, which is absolutely not what I'm talking about. And even in Africa, they have a problem with that. They think all these little kids are demons. They think they're little demons, and so they're just leaving their kids, or they're torturing their kids, because it's a combination of Catholicism and voodoo. Okay, because the Catholic Church promoted this, and it really spun out crazy, where parents were literally torturing their infants, thinking that they're literally demons, and that's stupid and crazy. That's what happens when you believe the Catholic Church and don't have the Holy Spirit. Okay, I will blame the Catholic Church for that, because everyone assumes that they're Christians, and they think Christians are promoting that. And even in Pet Sematary, you can see a little bit of this. Okay, so they go and take him to a burial ground, an ancient Native American burial ground. Okay, and before I say this, there are lots of Christians who are Native American. I'm talking about people who don't believe in Christ, and they end up doing very evil things and believe in evil things. Okay, so in Native American culture and other pagan religions, including Christianity, Catholic Christianity, and in the ancient Near East, which I'll bring up in a minute, alright, they believe that if your baby was not baptized, it died before it was not baptized, it went to hell. That's why infant baptism is so evil. It's an evil way of thinking. And that's why it's not even mentioned once in the Bible. Infant baptism is not mentioned one time in the Bible because it's evil. Okay, I talked about this in this video. I talked about ghosts, and I talked about infant baptism in this video right here. Okay, so in lots of tribes, if your child died, they had to go bury the child somewhere else, and to a different burial ground, because that burial ground was for cursed children, which is silly because that child did not go to hell, okay? But in the Bible, these women have that thought process, okay? The reason why I think these women are weeping for Tammuz is because they think a child died and it wasn't baptized, so it's in hell. It was a child that had to descend into the underworld. Okay, that's probably why there is some messaging there, why they're crying. Okay, oh, my baby wasn't baptized. It's in hell now, which is so evil. It's not true. Your infant isn't in hell. Your 5-year-old isn't in hell. They didn't even reach the age of discernment. They're in heaven. All right? And what happens is, this is what happens in these movies too. So a mother thinks that her child is dead or in hell, so she wants to go join the child, okay? I'll bring up this movie real fast. I have to bring up this movie. No one's probably ever seen this movie. It's called The Orphanage. This movie is really old. I saw it a really long time ago before it was saved. But anyway, this movie is done by the same guy who did Pan's Labyrinth. And it's a horrible movie. Let me explain to you this scary movie, why it was so scary and horrifying. And the guy probably did that on purpose. So when you go to the movie, you're just thinking this is just a basic movie about some ghost children. You know, like any stereotypical movie. But the whole movie isn't even really about the ghost children. It's about her son getting lost. And she can't find him. And eventually she finds him dead, okay? And that's actually what is really scary, okay? Your kid being lost or taken is way more scary than you seeing a ghost, right? Because that really happens. That is way more terrifying, right? That's why this movie is so troubling. Because it's not really about ghost children. It's about you losing your kid. Anyway, in this movie, she sees these ghost children. And her son dies. Okay, her son dies in the movie. And these ghost children, who are really demons, convince her to take some pills so she can go be with her son again. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you want to be with your son again? Just off yourself. Alright, and that's not going to happen. If you off yourself, you're never going to see your kid again. Alright, do not do that. Okay, do not off yourself. Don't weep over Tammuz. Okay, don't cry over the devil. You can be with your child again. That's what happened to King David. His baby, King David had real faith. He had real faith. King David's infant son died. And he was sad. Of course, it's still going to be sad. But he said, I know what brings him comfort is that he knows that he will see his son again. Okay? Instead of crying over Tammuz, he was strengthened by that. God, if you believe in God, you are strengthened by this. You're not going to be taking some pills and be tempted to go be with your kids again. Okay? Do not do that, please. Alright, now I'm going to talk about satyrs and Peter Pan because it's all basically relative. Alright, a little bit, mostly. Anyway, so satyrs they're in the Bible. They are part human, part goat. Sometimes they're mixed in with fawns or deer too, okay? Okay, I'm going to bring this up again. So, in the Greek culture, you being turned into an animal was a form of punishment. I already talked about this in this video right here. In this video and in the Medusa video, okay? So, in the Greek culture, you being turned into an animal was a form of punishment. King Lycaon had to be turned into a werewolf because he was eating human flesh. Medusa had to be turned into a part snake because she was, in their eyes, she was doing sexual sin. She was doing fornication inside a temple. Okay, satyrs started off as this and it branched out to a bunch of things. Satyrs were men who got drunk and couldn't handle their liquor, and they would sing and get drunk, and it has a lot to do with music, and it spawned out from there. So satyrs are actually mentioned doing this in the Bible, because that's probably where the Greeks got it from. This is in the Old Testament. It's in Genesis and stuff. Okay, so satyrs there are goat demons in the Bible. That's Azazel. Okay, but satyrs are mentioned specifically in the Bible twice. Okay, and notice that they're known for singing and dancing, and they live in the wilderness and or in an island. Very important. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. The owl shall dwell there, and the satyrs shall dance there. See, it's talking about satyrs dancing. The wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow. Okay, so that satyrs are out in the wilderness and they live on an island, just like Peter Pan lives on an island. Okay, that is not a coincidence. A lot of people are going to say that's a coincidence, but it's not. But they're known for singing and dancing, and they live on an island, just like Peter Pan. But the satyr, God uses the satyrs to explain many things that branched out from there, and God uses all of it. Okay, just like when I did my Medusa video, Medusa probably originally represented someone who did fornication in a temple, but I say the new definition of Medusa is someone who's a woman going on a revenge. Okay, she's about revenge. And let's do a little bit of etymology. Satyrs is where the word Saturn comes from, and it's where the word Saturday comes from, and it's probably where Saturnalia comes from. That's what happens in Saturnalia. Saturnalia is basically like Christmas and New Year's mixed together. It's when you get drunk and you do whatever you do, fornication, and you dance around. That is satyr image. That is some satyr stuff right there. Okay. So first of all, this is very important. The Baphomet is a satyr. Okay. It's a part goat human hybrid. Okay. It's depicted differently, but it's the same thing. The Baphomet is a satyr, and I really want to point out, so Peter Pan is part elf and he's a part Baphomet stuff. You can literally even see it in the movie. He does Baphomet imagery because the Baphomet is usually sitting or floating in a lotus position, okay, and he has children looking up at him. It's the same imagery. It's not a coincidence. Something else I need to point out, satyrs in the Greek culture, they can't control their sexual urges when it comes to nymphs. Nymphs are fairies, okay? They are fairies. That's actually where the word nymphomaniac comes from, because nymphomaniac has the word nymph in it. So satyrs are nymphomaniacs. That's why they hang out with fairies, but they're not really supposed to be friends, okay? Anyway. And I want to bring up something else. So Peter Pan is a satyr, but he's mixed in with Pied Piper. Those things are all crisscrossed. All these supernatural beings, evil beings, they all bleed into each other. They're all mixed together, especially when it comes to today's day and age of characters. Okay, so the Pied Piper, what he does is he plays a flute or a fiddle. Sometimes satyrs challenge God to a duel. Okay, I'm gonna bring it up in a minute. They challenge God to a duel, and a fiddling duel anyway. And what a Pied Piper does is they lure kids into water, and they end up dying. Okay, they end up drowning themselves. And that's what Peter Pan does. He convinces Wendy to go into the abyss. He plays some music. That's still some imagery there. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about something else. Okay. If you ever seen Peter Pan, what is he trying to get her to do? He's trying to get her to jump out of the window, right? That is some Pied Piper stuff. That's what the Pied Piper does. He tricks kids into offing themselves. And grown-ups, okay? And it also reminds me of a different movie. And excuse me for using some old movie that people, I'm not even sure, are aware of anymore. And this is an old Buffy vampire movie. Okay, not the TV version, the movie version. And Luke Perry's friend comes up to him in his window. He's a vampire now, and he's floating. And Luke Perry looks at him and says, "You know what? Go away. You're a freak. You can't come in. I'm not going out there."
Come on, man. Get away from here. I'm hungry. You're floating. Come on, man. Get away from here. I'm hungry.
See, that's what Wendy should have done. Hasn't she ever seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer? And it also kind of reminds you of Superman meets Lois Lane at her window, and they fly off together. Lois Lane, haven't you ever seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Don't you know if some freak is floating outside your window, you don't fly off with him? It's pretty sad that Luke Perry is the only one that gets it here. Okay? Anyway, back to the Pied Piper. That even happened. And that is so scary because even in Alice in Wonderland, that happens. If you've ever seen Alice in Wonderland, some rabbit convinces her to go down a hole, right? Or even in that movie, the It clown movie. What's that clown trying to do? He's trying to convince a little boy to go down into a ditch or go down into a drainage system, right? That is Pied Piper satyr stuff too. Okay, that's evil stuff trying to get kids lost. Even in that Orphanage movie, in the Orphanage, how that kid ends up dying is he starts playing with these imaginary friends, he starts playing with these ghost children, and they convince him to go into a hidden room in the house, and that's how he dies. Okay, and that is very dangerous. Now I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to talk very briefly about imaginary friends and kids. I'm going to talk about something. Perhaps, yes, your kids are maybe seeing a demon, okay, and maybe they're seeing some dark entity, okay, and these things are convincing them to go down a hole or go into a secret room they're not supposed to go in, and then they end up getting lost. But I really want to bring up something, okay? First of all, in this video I talked about this. Sometimes kids can see things that adults can't. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil, okay? It doesn't mean they're possessed or something. Kids operate on a different frequency range than adults, so they can hear and see things that adults can't. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're possessed, okay? Or they're demonic themselves, just because they see things. King David could sense evil spirits. Some of the prophets could see and sense evil spirits. Jesus could see and sense evil spirits. Does that mean that he was possessed and evil? No. Okay. Obviously, if you're playing with a Ouija board and then you see a demon, then yes, that is you doing it on purpose. Okay, and that is evil. Even dogs and cats can sense spirits. That doesn't mean that they're possessed and evil. That they operate on a different frequency range. I already talked about this in this video. However, I want to talk about. So yes, it's possible that kids can be seeing evil beings that adults can't, and they're actually demons, okay? Yes, that's true. That can happen. But something even more important I want to talk about is kids start having imaginary friends because some other people are not playing with them. Their parents are too busy, right? That's why kids start having imaginary friends. They don't have siblings to play with, or they have bad siblings, okay? Even in Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, what happens in the Lion, Witch, in the wardrobe? They're playing hide and seek, and she gets lost in a closet, and that is so sad because kids have literally died that way. They're playing hide and seek, and they hide in a closet, or they hide in a secret room, or they hide in a hole because their imaginary friends told them to, because no one else is playing with them, or they're not paying attention. Their parents are not paying attention to them, or their stupid siblings are being mean to them and tell them to go hide in some evil place, right? Some dangerous place. And even if, let's just say for argument's sake, that these kids aren't seeing some evil spirit, it really is just their imagination. Let's just use that. Even if it's their imagination, it's still evil, because they have to do that because they're bored, and so they have to start imagining a friend because they don't have any other friends, or their parents are not playing with them. Okay, that's even more evil than your kids seeing a demon. Okay, in my opinion, because that happens every day. Adults, they go and do their own stuff. They do their own sin. They either go to the bar, or they're too busy watching a baseball game, or whatever. They're not playing with their kids, and their kids end up in a hole somewhere, right? They end up lost forever. Okay, spiritually lost forever. And then it's not just talking about demons or just your imagination. You know, your kid can go hang out with some other bad kids, right? Some other lost children. Okay, some guy coming to your window, say, hey, let's sneak out and smoke something or do something else. Let's eat something. Let's go have fun, because your parents don't care about you anyway. And that's so funny, because that happens in Alice in Wonderland and in Peter Pan. If you pay attention to the beginning of the movies, these little girls, they get into a fight with their parents, and someone comes up to their window and says, hey, man, you don't like your parents anymore. Let's run away and do something else. Your parents don't care about you. And sometimes that is true. Sometimes your parents are too busy to play with their kids. They're too busy doing something else, and that happens all the time. And that is some real evil stuff. That's even more evil than your kid seeing an actual demon, in my opinion. Okay? Other little kids, other people can make your children lost. It's not just about seeing a demon, right? You know what? Peter Pan coming to Wendy's window kind of reminds me of like when boyfriends sneak into girlfriends' windows. You know what I mean? And hey, let's go run off and do something, because, you know, your parents aren't paying attention to you anyway. That happens every day, and that's even more, it may not be as creepy as you seeing a real demon, but it still is just as evil. I'll bring up The Shining real fast. It's like in The Shining, this little kid, he's roaming around this big hotel because his dad is too busy working, and he's not paying attention to him, and then he starts seeing some evil beings, or maybe some imaginary friends, Or maybe there really were just little girls who were trying to get him to do some evil stuff. Or even in that Pet Sematary movie, how does that little boy die? Some idiot is singing and dancing and not paying attention, going 200 miles an hour, and he's not paying attention. He kills a kid. That is a true definition of a satyr to me. Okay, it's not just about some demons that come into your window. It's about people. People. Okay, what did I say satyrs do? They get drunk and they're not paying attention, and they sing and dance, and before you know it, a kid is in a hole. Right? That is a satyr to me. That's way more serious because that happens every day. Okay, and even in the Greek culture, and in the Bible, these are people. These evil beings are actual descriptions of actual people doing actual sin. All right, it's not just about seeing some. Yes, demons are real, but you're the stinking demon. Okay. So if you watch Peter Pan, the rest of Peter Pan takes Wendy and her siblings through an open secret doorway, which is an Orphanum. This is an Orphanum in Peter Pan. You have to go through the secret doorway to go to the other side. Now, there's a bad version and a good version. There are two doorways to the afterlives, okay? There's a good one and a bad one. This is the only good doorway you're supposed to go through to the other side, okay? But that is obviously not what happens in Peter Pan. Peter Pan, they go through to a secret open doorway, an Orphanum, an opening, because that's probably where the word opening comes from, and they go to the other side. So you can very easily say that these kids died. They're all dead. They went to the other side. Wendy's dead. You could say that, okay? People have made YouTube videos about that, by the way. And they go to this place where a whole bunch of evil people are. The mermaids are evil in this cartoon. They're all trying to kill each other. The little boys are really evil. Captain Hook is evil. Peter Pan is evil. This is obviously not heaven. And it's very important to you to realize that this is an island. Okay, because this island is in the Bible, and I'll bring it up later in a different video. Just like Medusa was sent to an island. The satyr, the king satyr in this movie is living on an island. Alright? Because this island is mentioned in the Bible. Even this island is mentioned in Pinnochio. Okay, this island is in the Bible, and I'll have to make a whole nother video about that. Okay, so even in Pinnochio, what happens? His bad friends convince him to go to this pleasure island. Just like Peter Pan convinced Wendy to go to this magical island. It's really going to be a lot of fun. Come. And what happens? Pinocchio and his friends get turned into donkeys. That's what did I say? According to the Greek culture, you being turned into part animal was a sign that you went into the underworld, by the way. And it was a form of punishment. And this is true, okay? One day you will have to pay for it, even if you're younger. Once you've reached the passive age of discernment, which in my opinion might be somewhere between 9 or 10, 11, 12, something like that, alright? God is gonna hold you responsible for your choices and your actions, okay? And you are gonna be sent to that island if you don't come to God, okay? You can blame your parents, you can blame your false religions, you can blame the devil, but you really are gonna have to start looking at yourself for this responsibility. Alright, bad little kids end up donkeys and they get sent off to an island. Okay, so I talked about Peter Pan, and I talked about, that whole thing. I'm going to bring up something else. I'm going to focus on, this is real life history. I'm going to bring in real history with these cartoons. I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to talk about the Lost Boys, and the pirate ship, and the ships. And I'm going to talk about Captain Hook real fast, okay? Captain Hook is an imaginary character, but he's based off of something that is very real, okay? So, Captain Hook is probably in the Spanish Armada. He looks like something that he represents a Spanish captain. And this is very important because this is historically accurate in this movie, okay? The Spanish captains were mostly Catholic, and I have to bring that up, and they would literally tie up indigenous people and choke them and beat them to death or burn them alive in order to get them to get baptized sometimes and to repent. Okay, they literally did this. This picture is actually historically accurate. Okay, they tied up the Mayans and the Incas. Okay, sometimes they merged together, but sometimes, over time those two religions merged together. Okay, but The Spanish conquistadors would literally tie up the Incas and the Mayans and torture them. Okay, that is obviously evil and insane. They actually did that to the last Inca king. Okay, they tied him up and they choked him and they forced him to get baptized, which is a bunch of nonsense. And the thing is, when people hear these stories, they think Christians are crazy because Catholic people are nuts and they make real Christians look evil. Okay? Catholic people are so lost, they make Jesus and real Christians look like fools. So Captain Hook represents someone who went to hell, who was probably a Spanish conquistador who literally tied people up and tortured them. True story. Captain Hook is based on true story, guys. Okay, so now I want you just to table the whole Peter Pan character. I've just put him to the side for a second because I want to focus on the Lost Boys right now and a little bit of Wendy, just them. I want to talk about something because this is actually when the original book of Peter Pan was being written. Okay, there was something. This Peter Pan, some of this stuff is actually based on real historical things that were happening while the book was being written. I'm not talking about the movie. Okay, so if you've seen Peter Pan, there's Lost Boys and there's a ship, right? And they have weapons in their hands. I believe for a fact that this is based off that part of the story is based off of what was really going on when the book was being written. So in the Victorian age, when the book was being written, it was in it's very late 1800s and into the early 1900s. Bad boys were literally sent on ships. Okay, they were actually literally sent on ships if they were caught ditching school, or if they were being bad, or if they were homeless. They were sent to go work on ships. And it really is about perspective of if this was a good thing or a bad thing. Of course, you can imagine maybe there was some neglect going on there, but they were living on the streets and being bad, so they were sent to ships. It was like a boarding school. And I know for a fact that they got that part from Peter Pan. Okay. Anyway, so they would send these kids on ships, and they literally had weapons. They had clubs in their hands. They would practice with swords. They would play music, okay? And that's all you can see all that happening with these Lost Boys and Peter Pan. And you might wonder why they would give little kids guns and stuff like that. Well, it ranged from like 7-8-year-olds all the way up to 18. And the idea was they were trying to train them to join the army or something, so they wouldn't have to live on the streets anymore or be in the gangs anymore. That was the idea. That's why they were training them with weapons. And I know that's very controversial or whatever. But something that is very important. Very, very, very important. This is when they were actually preaching the Bible in boarding schools and schools. Okay, they actually promoted the Bible and Christianity. And these captains on these boats, they were usually preachers as well. Okay, they weren't just normal captains. They weren't just wardens. They were preachers, and they would have to go to get this. I talked about this in this video. This Battle of Armageddon is literally everywhere. Okay, so get this. So on these boats, you had to go to a religion class. Okay, that was part of the requirement of staying on the boat. Okay, and you can either pick between the Catholic priest, or you can pick the non-denominational Bible study. That was literally the two choices on this boat. That is the Battle of Armageddon. You can see it in every age. There's the boat was spiritually cut in half, and there was a battle going on. The boys can either be Catholic, or they could pick the Bible study, but they had to pick one of them. Okay? And that is so crazy because that is a story in the Bible. And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think the Bible is the Word of God, and God knows everything. He can see the future. He knows exactly what things were going to be like in the Victorian era and on these ships. And in this story of the Bible, Jesus tells the disciples to go onto the other side of the ship. He wasn't just talking to the disciples. He was talking to these boys, Catholic boys, okay, that were reading the Bible too, possibly, and he was telling them, you better pick the right side of this boat, because this boat is spiritually cut in half, and one side of this boat is going to sink into the abyss, okay, because Catholic people do not go to heaven. And I'm not saying that because I hate Catholic people. I'm trying to save your soul, Okay, you better pick the right side of this boat. And you can, and that I talked about that in this video. That this battle between two kingdoms on a boat even is very evident here. Okay, so these boys, and I understand just because you go to Bible study or just because you do whatever doesn't mean you're necessarily a Christian, but some of them probably did get saved. Okay, some of them probably did get saved. And then also they also had missionaries who would go on the boats. They were allowed to go on the boats, and they're allowed to play games and interact with these kids to try to rehabilitate them. Okay, they would have outsiders. They would even allow girls to go on the boat. I'm saying that on purpose. They would allow some teenage girls, missionaries. They would allow them to go on the boat, and they were allowed to teach them the Bible. Okay. And they would play games with them so they wouldn't have imaginary friends, alright? Or bad friends anymore. And this is what I can see with this Wendy thing, maybe. That's me adding on to the story, but it's actually based off the real life things. So in real life, people would go on these boats and teach these kids about God, alright? Which was a very good thing because they needed it. And another thing is that God does tell you to guide people, the lost people, to the foot of the cross. Okay, but obviously the Peter Pan version is a very twisted version of it. God does tell you to go to an open doorway in the sky. God even uses the philosophy and understanding of you getting on a boat up in the sky. Spiritually, this is still true. God still has an open doorway on the ark for you spiritually before you die. So you please better get on it, okay? Let someone good guide you to that boat, to that open doorway. Not Peter Pan, though. No, it's not a coincidence. There is a good version to these stories, and you're not going to find them without Jesus Christ. Alright, so anyway. So please think about this stuff, guys, and thank you.